Okay, welcome to the next episode of CyberTangent. We have today with us Mike Alexiou, who's going to be talking to us about cyber awareness, then, now, and the future. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So Mike has over 25 years of information security business and technical experience. He's considered a cybersecurity subject matter expert in many arenas. Mike has served as the global leader in emergency response services for IBM and has led cyber and business governance efforts for Verizon's enterprise solutions. Mike got his early career start as a computer forensics investigator with the police department in Alabama, as well as with the FBI. He currently serves as Chief Information Security Officer for Nehemiah Security, who is the parent company of this CyberTangent production. Okay, Mike, so cyber awareness has been rising over the past few years. And yet, as headlines suggest, bad cyber habits still persist and even play a central role in many of the breaches we hear about. If you had to compare 5 years ago to today, where would you say we are with the adoption of cyber awareness?
Landon, I believe that we've actually progressed a great deal in cyber awareness from a training perspective. Probably 5 years ago, we saw corporations, larger corporations, that would do bare minimum for their training of their employees. They may place or put on one course a year that might be for 30 minutes to an hour. Could be a presentation that someone had to click through, an employee would click through and actually do a questionnaire or some type of testing at the very end to do pass, fail, maybe 5-10 questions. This was just a bare minimum. It was not even really useful, in my opinion, just based on the fact that we had the same threats that exist in the past 5 years still exist today. We still have those same types of attacks that are going on. And the need for this cyber training actually has really come to light over, like you said, the last 5 years, as companies realize that one of their weakest links within their organization are their employees. Not because they are doing anything malicious or doing anything with intent, but unfortunately, adversaries have gotten extremely smart. And the need for the security operations teams to educate employees on a regular basis and in unique ways is important, because we need to be able to get their attention. We need to make sure that they're all working towards the same goal, which is security for the company. They have to understand that the brand itself is worth protecting. So we've seen where corporations have really taken a stronger stance on security awareness type training. They've developed platforms around it. They've made sure it's ongoing. They make sure that they're communicating much better with their employees on a regular basis. And they want to make sure that those employees are then communicating back with them and utilizing their eyes and ears to make sure that the environment's safe.
What do you see as some of the biggest barriers to cyber awareness?
Really, it's content delivery. And the reason I say that is when we interact with our employees, we don't want it to become so often or so frequent or such a bothersome type activity that no one listens. They just want to get through it and get it done. We have to make it interactive. We have to make it fun in some instances. We have to make it interesting. It has to relate back to real world situations. Doesn't have to be doom and gloom all the time, but it needs to be something that they can feel like they're part of a security team. Some of them actually find that interesting, and they want to be able to reach out and say, hey, I think I might have something here. Someone called my desk. Could be some form of social engineering, or I've received a phishing email. What do you think? All of these things, if you're getting that type of feedback from your employees, you're actually doing a good job in training them, because they feel very comfortable in reaching out to your security operations teams.
For the more progressive companies, what are they using as metrics or measures for success? What's the goal of a healthy cyber awareness program?
I think that most of the platforms that are being developed today, and there's several, there's PhishMe, there is Sophos has their own platform. Most of the larger security companies have developed or purchased and acquired companies that may focus in that area of security awareness training and have platforms that actually support that. The reason it's important is that we can actually track who actually has taken the training, how they performed, how well they did. We can track the metrics behind it. We can also get new content from these companies. So creation of new content, new phishing type attacks. It's not just PowerPoint driven. It shouldn't be just PowerPoint driven. It really should be interactive. We look at these platforms now as something that really can help educate and keep our employees on their toes with the newest forms of adversaries that are out there. We understand that the job and the goal of security is to hopefully live in the background and to secure the infrastructure and make sure business can operate and make sure business can go forward and be profitable. And that's what we really want to be able to do. Unfortunately, there's only some instances where our employees really are key pieces of our monitoring. They can and will notify us when something looks amiss. But to do that, they really have to understand what's out there that could harm them. So keeping them abreast on news, keeping them abreast on, in our case, we send out a newsletter. Your teams actually send out great newsletters every month to let us know about the newest breaches and kind of synopsis of what those breaches are. That's great information for employees. They're interested in reading that. And if they see something very similar to it or something that may have the same look and feel, they're much more eager to let us know. So like I said, the platforms themselves have really led themselves to building great information feedback to us as security leaders. We can see when an employee may be failing in a certain area. Some of these platforms will actually allow us to perform fictitious phishing attacks. It may give us some ability to look and see what those results are within different business organizations and then realign training with that to make sure that that person is receiving training just because they made a mistake. I'm much happier they made a mistake on the platform and with that training than they did in real life. So being able to give them an option to go back through some very basic training to understand where they may have slipped up is usually not a bad thing.
That's neat, and that's encouraging, the picture that you painted of the innovation in these cyber awareness platforms. Question for you. You think of the innovation within the cyber awareness platforms and the evolving techniques of the bad actors with respect to social engineering and phishing and so forth. How would you characterize that? Who's moving faster? Where does the game stand right now?
I think from an innovative standpoint, I think the adversary is always ahead. They do things that we kind of stand back and from a security operations, you have a lot of responsibility across the organization, not just to do security awareness training, but to protect the infrastructure, internal and external, from insider threat, from external threats. So to deliver new content or to stay on top of new content that could help protect you in the future, it's kind of hard. We rely on platforms, hopefully, to help us do that and for them to look at real world situations and develop new content that we can then utilize within our infrastructure to train our personnel. We've seen where adversaries have used natural disasters. They have used world events. They have used political headlines. Whatever the case may be that can draw people to a certain website, to opening an email or an attachment, they have really started to understand over the last several years how our employees think, or how any employee thinks, or how any individual thinks. What piques their interest? What can I say to them to actually get them to act? The same thing that they've done over time with social engineering. So they've really understood and gotten into the mindset of, how can I motivate a person on the end of the phone or through a correspondence of some type? How can I motivate you to do what I want you to do? And it may be something very simple. It could be that it's complete ruse, but it might be something that you feel like as an employee, this couldn't hurt. Let me do this. It sounds like this person's real. So it's very important for us to, and for these vendors to hopefully stay on top of all these different types of attacks, the different scenarios. I myself make it a point to, during the holidays, when an event happens, maybe a global event, to remind everybody, please be very careful. Yeah. It sounds terrible, but adversaries will utilize this news, this event, or anything else to get your interest and to pique your interest and to get you to do something. We hate to see that happen, but it does every time. Not
that we want to glamorize the adversaries, but everyone loves a good war story. Does anything come to mind with respect to the most audacious social engineering tactic that you've seen in play out there?
I've seen a couple of different ones that truly, just coming from a law enforcement background and dealing with victims of violent crimes, when I see someone actually do utilize a Las Vegas shooting or utilize any type of school shooting or anything like this to get individuals to go to whatever the case may be, it really is disgusting, unfortunately. I've seen this happen. I've seen it rampant. It's almost like they're waiting for the next event to happen or the next incident to happen just to utilize it. I've seen that happen in my career several times, where even people that you believe are much higher on the security chain will see an email that's formed or crafted in such a way that they're very interested in, I've got to take a look at this. Or it looks like it's something that's definitely, I want to go Google this, find the information, go to a website. Adversaries know this. They understand that if they set up news sites, if they set up anything, that they can manipulate search results and they can get you to go to certain sites, and then they can actually embed code in those sites. It's much easier to do a drive-by during those types of incidents because people are searching for that information. They want to know what happened. They want to read stories about it. They take full advantage of this. And truly, I've seen it happen. I know it happens. It's really unfortunate. Hopefully, we have security in place within the organization that we can mitigate those types of attacks, from being able to secure browsers, email systems, segment off systems, making sure that if someone is a victim of ransomware or anything like that, we limit that type of damage from how we build our security stack.
So it sounds like there are truly no rules or no barriers.
There is truly, I don't believe when an adversary wants to get into a victim, there is no rules. I can utilize anything and everything from social engineering to calling them on the phone and telling them a tragedy has happened to sending emails, links, or anything else. Their goal is to get inside that organization or get inside that system. Like you said, there really is no rules.
Okay, be diligent is the word. So the title of our podcast, Mike, is CyberTangent, and we do enjoy going on brief tangents during these podcasts. We're going to go on one now. Let's talk for a moment about incentives and enforcement of cyber awareness programs. Right? So organizations, but you've seen this play out numerous times, will run, let's just say, the perfect program where they assemble all the employees, they run them through the most innovative platform, and they score not only sufficiently, but they score well. And then some period of time, whether it's 4 days or 4 weeks after that training, it's as though it never happened and behavior goes right back to where it was before. I know it's a little bit controversial, but where does the idea of an incentive or an enforcement or a disincentive or a punishment come into play where organizations are thinking about behavior from employees and the responsibility that employees bear for behaving in a...
I think it's a great question. And I've seen some very innovative ways that CISOs have rewarded their employees for good behavior. That could be Amazon gift cards. It could be simple meals, lunches, whatever the case may be. These are things that, between the carrot and the stick, and truly the carrot is much easier to deliver. If you have an employee who sits there and is able to detect a ransomware type attack or sees a phishing opportunity. We recently had an organization that had a business email type compromise, and luckily the finance department was able to determine what was going on and stop it before anything happened. That was due to training on their behalf.
Okay.
So they were able to see it and react to it. It wasn't a system that stopped it. These employees should be incentivized. They should be congratulated and rewarded. It should be pointed out and given to them as an accolade, basically. From a other end of the spectrum, I think that if we weren't dealing with such a sophisticated adversary, I would say that we could come down harder on some employees for continuously failing certain training or training type simulations or even real world events. We know that In some situations, it might be prudent to retrain those individuals, but we have to be careful that it doesn't become mundane and doesn't become something that truly they resent having to do every time. If we can also evaluate our own systems to sit there and make sure that, is there anything that we're doing on our end that we could do better to help eliminate this from ever touching your desk or ever coming across your desk? The last thing we want to do is we want you focused on the good. We want you focused on driving business. We want you focused on delivering customer service and support and marketing. We want you to be able to do that, do your job. So if I can only take a small amount of your time away just to reiterate, reinforce training, that's much better. And it has to be delivered in a way that truly, hopefully it sticks. Like I said, could I see it ever get to the point where an employee endangers an organization to the point where they need to be terminated? Anything's possible. I hate to see that would ever happen, but I wouldn't say that organizations haven't taken that option off the table.
That makes sense, and thank you for allowing that tangent. I like the idea of the reward and can see that being a powerful solution as opposed to the carrot, which can get sticky. Breach response, Mike. The focus in cybersecurity, if you walk any of the shows, sure seems to be the technology and the tools designed to secure organizations to prevent a breach. Cybersecurity awareness certainly fits into that category of trying to prevent that breach. Is there a role that cyber awareness does play or should play in the post-breach world for an organization?
Absolutely. And the reason that it should is if I've trained my employees well, even when they've made a mistake, they should be able to react in a positive way to that. The training should focus on if a breach occurs, if an incident happens, the main thing that we want to happen is this not to go from a security incident to a security breach. So how do we stop that? Well, one way to do that is to raise your hand, is to let people know, hey, I might have had a problem here. The sooner we're able to react to an incident, the quicker that we can stop it from actually escalating to something in a breach area. We've seen employees that, unfortunately, if they have a fear of being fired, if they have a fear of being ridiculed or anything else, they won't raise their hand. We have to reiterate in training, look, we're all here as a team. You guys make hundreds of security decisions every day. You might not realize that you do, but you do. Every time you pick the phone up, every time you're talking to somebody you don't know on the other end, you're making decisions for the corporation when that person asks you to do something for them. Or maybe asking for information. You're making a security conscious decision. Should I give this information to this person? Are they worthy of that information? Or is that information something that I can release to them? We need to make sure from leadership's perspective that we have policies and procedures in place that protect our employees, that they can fall back on and say, I can't really give you that information. I need to be able to, we have a policy against that. Let me go check with my supervisor or my manager or our leaders. We want to be able to give you that ability through training to understand you do have options here to help us stop a breach. Even if you started it, we may be able to stop that incident at the second gate or the third gate before it gets to a point where it really has damaged the company or we've had losses. So I think training really does come into effect when it comes to breaches. Even the employees that have, like I said, been the true catalyst to start it, have been the hero at the very end to be able to not be afraid to say something.
The idea of digital transformation and the interconnectedness of organizations clearly creates a dependency from one organization to the next with respect to cyber awareness, since there's so much information and so many transactions pass back and forth between these companies. How does that play out with respect to cyber awareness? No longer is your realm of interest just your 1,000 employees, for instance.
I think there's a piece of due diligence there, that before we do business with other organizations, we see where they sit in that matrix to see if they have taken proper steps to educate their employees. Do they have any type of regulatory bodies that they report to? Have they passed all those audits? Do they have standard security in place? Do they meet the CIS top 20? Before we do business with certain companies, third parties, we always ask for that information to make sure that we're dealing with somebody, especially if we're transferring any type of data over to them, That could be internal data to us or our customer data. It could be that we're sharing information in some way. We want to make sure that they're going to safeguard it the same way that we would safeguard that information. If there's any doubt in our mind that that organization is not that organization security is subpar, we should take a minute to think before we act.
What would you say to a company that has been lax in its cyber awareness or its cybersecurity programs because they feel like they're too small, or they're in an industry that's not a target, or they'll never be affected?
It's never too late. And there are every level of training out there that could and should be put on that really have no cost. There's not a tremendous budgetary requirement for some training. Some of it's actually free. Same thing with simulation. A lot of it's free that you can actually do in open source. It doesn't take a tremendous effort on your part to do this and to implement it. There's even some platforms that are free that you can actually get on that are cloud-based that'll help you actually do this if your organization is under 500 employees. So there really is no reason to do it. If a company is thinking that due to their size, they're not a target, I would highly suggest them to change that mindset quickly. Adversaries don't care that much about verticals in most cases. There are certain adversaries that are looking for certain pieces of data or certain organizations or certain systems, and they live and breathe within certain verticals. But there's other adversaries that truly are just looking for open targets. They're looking for availability. They're looking for opportunity. If they see something from a vulnerability standpoint that they know they can exploit, they're going to do massive searches looking for any system that's out there. They'll discover what it is later. I need to get in the door first. So if I'm able to actually breach through the door and get inside, I'll discover who you are and what you have. I guarantee you that everyone has crown jewels of some type. It could be simple accounting. It could be customer data. It could be product. It could be anything. But never think you're too small for someone to actually attack you. We've seen restaurants. We've seen that are mom and pop type restaurants that have been breached for PCI data. They guarantee they never thought they would be the victim of this. Same thing with hotels, small chains of hotels, things like that. They just did not put the security in place that they should have to protect that PCI type data. And like I said, it's never too late to start. Don't ever think that you're not a target. You will be a target. You live and breathe on the internet. You're there. And they're looking for any opening to at least either utilize your system for a secondary attack or look at your data and figure out what exactly can I do with this.
And I might add, you painted the picture before, the powerful picture of the interconnectedness of the organizations, right? While they may not be of value to the target,
Exactly.
Can they provide access to somebody else who is of more value to them?
And most of the adversaries out there know this. They're looking for that interconnect. They're looking for where do you actually go out. If we used to discuss these types of activities with lawyers and attorneys' offices and firms all the time. And we reiterated to those firms all the time, you are definitely a target here. The information that you provide, the services you provide, what you have within your organizations, the law firms are tremendous sources of data. That is really motivated law firms today to really take a new look at cybersecurity. The firms before, I'd say 5 years ago, really were not that concerned about it. Now they realize that they are targets. If I know who a certain organization may be utilizing for a M&A type activity, if I find out that a certain law firm or a certain organization is assisting a larger corporation, it's a great way, just like you said. I might not be able to breach the larger corporation, but if I breach the smaller one, I can get in because they're trusted already.
As we wrap up our questions, previously, Mike, I asked you to compare 5 years ago to today. If you can help bring us home by comparing what you expect to see in 5 years from now, what's going to change with respect to cyber awareness, both from the corporation standpoint and from the individual standpoint?
I think that today's generation, they really consume data differently than we did. I'm aging myself, but in my time, they are very, very fast. They're extremely intelligent. They go through material and they usually keep abreast of what's going on. I think overall news agencies have highlighted cyber type attacks. I think it's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds where it might not have been before. I think that's going to continue. I think that it's going to be hopefully not a numbing effect, but hopefully people will keep aware of these types of breaches. I think that cyber awareness training will become key in, one, educating these companies in the future and their employees, but also utilizing them as a very strong monitoring tool. We have multiple platforms out there that we can use to monitor network traffic, logs, look for endpoint protections, all these things that present a strong security stack. But part of that security stack is going to be your employees. They are going to be hopefully a deterrent and a monitoring source for things that we might have a very difficult time monitoring. So I really think it's actually going to get better over time. I think that we're going to have workforces that truly, and hopefully they already realize this, understand how key they are to keeping the organization safe. It's not just about locking doors, locking windows. Adversaries can come in multiple ways, from bring your own device, from BYOD, to all the different IoT type devices that we're definitely have within our offices today. I think our employees are becoming more and more aware of those dangers.
Mike Alexiou, Chief Information Security Officer for Nehemiah Security, here on CyberTangent. Mike, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Landon. I appreciate it.